Welcome back to Elevate. My name is Mansi Gandhi and I'm your host today. Here we have a very special guest, Mkwa and Amber. Welcome to Elevate. How are you guys doing?
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, and thank you. It's great to be here. I'm looking forward to sharing today. So thank you.
Amazing. Looking forward as well. Mkwa, Amber, we would love to hear a little bit more about yourself. So, Amber, would you like to go ahead?
Oh, sure. Amber Indigenous. My name is Amber Caribou. I am from Treaty 6. I am from Mathias Colomb Cree Nation. I am Swampy Cree. My spirit name is Spirit Rattler, and I am a 42 Indigenous Kwa, residing here in Toronto.
That's amazing. Welcome.
I'd just like to introduce myself. So, Bojo, Gitchamanatu, Nokamis, Majomis, Mishkomi Kwe, Gishigong, Wabanong, Shawanong, Nigabadong, Giwagnong, Waabshkas, Mkwa, Dishnakas, Mkwa Dodem, Ojibwe Dao, Benesi Wasis, and Dunjba. And I just wanted to start off by saying, talking about our laughter, we're told it's our greatest medicine. Mm-hmm. So, and it just finds a way for us, for me anyway, to ease into the question. So just a little bit of release. And I'm just so happy to be here. And I really admire the name of your podcast, Elevate. I think it's so cool to elevate people and communities. It's just amazing. Thank you.
I would like to welcome you once again. And it's such an honor to have both of you. We would love to learn more about how your roots are and how your background has been for you, being a part of the Bear Clan, what that meant for you, and for you, how did social work come to you?
I grew up not knowing my language. So when I moved to the city here, that's when I started searching inside myself and searching in the community to find where I could learn my language. And I was very fortunate to learn with somebody by the name of John Roy at the Native Women's Resource Centre in Toronto. An amazing teacher, and his one philosophy about the languages, he says the voice of our languages is in the sounds of the land. So if you think about that, my name Mkwa, my actual name Waabshkaa Mkwa, translated to English is white bear. He says to us, for example, take a look at the bear. He says the bear is, he's got big lips or big mouth. So you hear that sound, and that's the sound of that M. And then when he's looking around, go. So that's how the word Mkwa came to be. Mm-hmm. He taught me in the dialect from up in Wiki area, you don't pronounce the M, so it just becomes Kwa. Kwa. So that's an example of how the voice of our language is in the sound of the land. So we took a look at our surroundings and the animals in the area. That's how that word came to be. And if you were to dig a little bit deeper about the Bear Clan, the one thing, when we're born, we're given our name. I wasn't fortunate enough to be given a name at birth. However, I found it later on. I was so proud to learn that when you're given a name by an elder, use a sema and he or she's connected to the creator. And what he's able to do is pick that name. My name, I've had it for a long time, since before I was born. And the person I went to, Alex Steed in Kenora, he was able to talk to the creator and bring my name to me, Waabshkaa. I was fortunate also, he gave me a song. And about my clan, we're given roles and we're given responsibilities with our clan. So we don't have a first and last name. We have a name, we have a clan, we have a nation. Those are our ways of defining ourselves on the land. And to get a name, it's not an easy thing. I was in my community growing up and I wanted to know my name. So I reached out for tobacco, offered some elders. And they said, okay, we're going to give you a name, but you're going to come to us. He told me that you'll be a leader for your people, but not in your community. He told me about my responsibilities about the Bear Clan. He goes, it's meant to be a protector. He said to protect the community. He also said that the bear is responsible for taking care of the plant medicines. And some of the other things I found about my name was that when you're a member of the Bear Clan, your role is you're the one that bridges the communities or bridges the issues. So you're basically like solution-focused kind of thing. So you bridge the gaps between the men and women's community, between issues in the community. So that's kind of the role there of the Bear Clan. That's what they do.
Wow, I'm awestruck already. So much of struggle, but then at the end made you feel so good about yourself. That itself says that the struggle was worth it. I'm guessing so.
Where I am today, I'm a Anishinaabe person. working with newcomers. And here I am with that role, like bridging the connection. And my role is to work with newcomers, to build awareness, to build training, so that newcomers will know about the first people of this land, and also that bridge about there are similarities between our culture and the newcomers' culture.
We'd also love to learn more about your roots and how did social work happen to you, more about your background.
So that's a really interesting question. I've never thought I'd ever be a social worker. I actually grew up thinking I wanted to be an artist. I actually went to school to be a photographer, and that didn't pan out, but that's okay. So growing up, much like Mkwa's experience, and I feel like it might be a lot of Indigenous people's experience. My mother is a residential school survivor. It was very stereotypical, I feel like, how people view Indigenous people, all those negative norms. It was a very abusive household. We lived in Winnipeg, Manitoba. I always say we were kind of like an after-school special. We fled in the middle of the night. I think all she brought was our toys and some clothes. We took the Greyhound bus and we moved here to Toronto, and we lived with my aunts. Honestly, I thank my mother for that all the time. But growing up in residential school, identity is stripped away from you. Your existence is stripped away from you. Your being, your whole self is stripped away from you. Growing up, I was taught to be, maybe not taught, but it was kind of an upbringing of being ashamed of who you were. But that's what they did to her in residential school. They made her ashamed to be who she was. She never taught us our language. I honestly grew up being ashamed of myself. And I look very Indigenous. At the time, I wasn't proud of that, but now I full-heartedly accept that. Know that I'm the most Indigenous looking Kwe, and I love that. There was a lot of like, well, we don't talk about that. I experienced a lot of racism growing up. I recall like being a little girl, not in Toronto, but when we were in Manitoba, before we came to Toronto, my mom and I were walking down the street and someone threw something at us and they called us squaws, which is a racial slur for Indigenous women. And I remember asking my mom, what does that mean? And she told me what it meant, and it was a hurtful word towards Indigenous women, that people just carry a lot of hate in their hearts. So there was just a lot of things that kind of trickled into my worth as a person. You know, as I got older, after I went to school for photography, I started working at an Indigenous agency. I learned so much. I started learning about my culture, my heritage, and it made me become proud to be Indigenous. I started learning more about residential school. Like a lot of people, my mother she never told me about residential school because she didn't want to relive that trauma. Which is fair. I totally understand it. But being an Indigenous organization, I started, meeting Indigenous friends. I didn't have any Indigenous friends growing up. I've been working with my community forever, and I think becoming a social worker, coming into social work, was really a passion project for me, because I know there's a lot of Indigenous people probably out there who have the same feelings I did growing up, especially our youth. And I think it's really important that we advocate for our Indigenous people and be kind of those role models. We do succeed and that we do overcome. That's kind of why I wanted to be a social worker and work with my people. I just wanted to let people know that we shouldn't be ashamed of who we are, and those are those barriers that we need to cross, and I think I'm living proof of that. Thank you.
You've got such a nice heart to actually not let anyone else to live the same experiences that you went through, working with people who might feel that way and giving them confidence that no, life is better. It's not this way.
Growing up, I lacked major confidence, but now that I get seasoned as we get older, I'm so proud of the person I'm becoming and the person that I am, and in my indigeneity, it's just...
So that brings me to my next question. There's so many people who are facing the same situations and they're reclaiming that identity. Do you have any encouragement words that you want to share with them?
Oh, absolutely. We talk about resiliency. Maybe people don't know what that word means, but that's okay. Everyone's on their own journey and their own path. It might not describe what they're feeling at the moment, but, we do overcome and we do find our own path. You know, we do have hiccups along the way, especially with working with my community. I have seen it, but we're fighters. We have these loud anti-voices, I think. And like Mkwa says, laughter is medicine. And I really hardly believe that. That's how we're healing. My words would just be like, we are resilient. We do overcome. Your journey might not be there yet, but you will find your way.
So, Mkwa, are there some important stories or teachings that you would like to share with everybody today?
Maybe one, it's about, I guess, the foundation of our culture. For me, the foundation of my culture, they call them the 7 grandfather teachings. And in the community, there's a bunch of us now that call those the 7 grandparent teachings. And that's a way of including grandpa and grandma in these teachings. And those teachings are, for me, the foundation of my culture. So truth, love, respect, honesty, humility, wisdom, and bravery. And along with a group of us, there's also one other change that we wanted to include with those teachings, and that's the teaching of forgiveness. And I think that's important today because of what Amber mentioned earlier, residential schools. I'm not a residential school survivor. My parents weren't in residential school. However, my mother was in something they called a boarding school. And that boarding school was run by nuns. And my mother told us one story about being there in that St. Joseph's boarding school in Thunder Bay. And I guess they used to have a long, elaborate, curved stairway up to the 2nd floor. And they gave my mother the job of cleaning the stairway with a little toothbrush. And that's the only thing she said about that place. The one other thing she said was it was run by nuns. She said that they were really kind of mean to her. What I'm trying to talk about, including the word forgiveness in those teachings, is that at some point in time in our lives, I think we need to forgive ourselves and forgive those people for those things that they've done to us. And that's why I like being part of this little group that talks about changing the 7 grandfather teachings to 7 grandparent teachings, about including the word forgiveness amongst those teachings, and also to include the aspect of when people are hurting the most, even if they're under the influence, there's a place in the circle for them too. That's the kind of teaching that I'd like to share. First Nations Day, for me, is one of those days that we can be proud of who we are and all the rich culture that we bring to this country. And it's a remembrance for me too that we had a role to bring in the newcomers here, where we're able to show them how to survive on the land. We're able to give them the teachings about the food that's available, about hunting and all this. And so we're able to do those kinds of things. That would be the teaching I'd like to bring.
Forgiveness, yes. It's so true because in our culture, it's said that when you forgive somebody, you're letting go of a big burden that just goes away and you feel much more at peace. That state of mind and the lightness that you feel makes you look at new things, open up to new avenues, learn more. It helps you in so many ways. It just gives me the same understanding that that's how bringing forgiveness into the learnings and teachings is so important.
And if you were to think about the words of Senator Sinclair Baugh, author of the Truth and Reconciliation Report, and he says you can't have reconciliation without truth. And for me, and for what we're talking about here, forgiveness, truth, reconciliation, and forgiveness. So that for me, that kind of completes, I think, that lesson or teaching that I do work with a lot of survivors. I have worked with a lot of families that were impacted by missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, boys, and Two-Spirited people. Now the Ministry of Attorney General calls it missing and murdered Indigenous people to include the men, the boys, and Two-Spirited people. So I think that's very important, the aspect of forgiveness. If he was still here today, Senator Sinclair, I think he would like what we're trying to say here. So, Miigwech.
Definitely, definitely.
I love that. I think we should all practice forgiveness. I know it can be really hard and heavy on our heart, and sometimes you're like, oh, I'm so that person, but you got to release that because it's not good to carry that with you.
Yeah. In their own time, I think everybody comes to that place. I'm not forcing people or telling people to forgiveness. I'm just saying here's an option, and forgiveness. It's a healthy way of living, spiritually, emotionally, physically, and mentally. So,
I remember you telling us about this story where you lit up a sacred fire with the youth. We would love to hear more about it.
Again, between 2000 2010 and 2013, I went up to my community, B'nai Wassison, Fort William First Nations, to be the culture and rec coordinator. So my first thing was to, like, when we wake up, we smudge, like, we wash our face. So that's what smudging is about for me, represents for me, is that cleansing of our spirit, our mind, our body. And so the next thing I thought of, I'm going to need some help, and people were calling me a witch doctor when I went to the community. So I had to find a way to bring culture to the community. And so I looked to some of my teachings. One of the very basic teaching is that before there's ceremony, there's fire. So I said, I'm going to light a sacred fire. So I took my tobacco and I offered it to another elder from Portage, and her name was Wraparound. And she became my guide about how I was going to bring culture back to a community. So what we did is I offered her my tobacco. I said, I'd like to light a fire. And she said, okay, light a fire. She told me how to do it. And she told me to get the youth. So that's what I did. I went to my boss and said, I'd like to light a sacred fire. He says, well, we don't have no place to do that. And I said, I'd like to light it behind the community center. And the community center in our community is where we play bingo. So you better not interfere with the bingo, was his words. So I said, okay. So I went out, I found a place out back, just clearing a little place for the fire. There was already youth coming. It was like I was doing something that was meant to be. They call me bear in my community. What are you doing? I said, I'm just going to light a sacred fire. Well, you're going to need wood, is what they said. I said, cool. So they went out and got wood. And I didn't have to ask. I didn't have to do anything. The only thing I did is I put down my tobacco, my senla. And the youth came without even a flyer or anything. They just came. We lit the fire. And usually fires burn for 4 days, In this particular case, the fire burned for a total of 36 days.
Wow.
And my boss was really on my case about, you're interfering with the bingo, and people can smell smoke all over. I said, it's the bingo players now that are coming out to the fire and offering tobacco. I said, I'll put the fire out when the youth stop bringing me the wood. Mm. And so it went on for 36 days. It's that time where you sense the fire, it's time to put the fire out. So I phoned Wraparound, and she says, well, when the youth stop bringing the wood, that's when you can put the fire out. Now the fire's burning down, there's no more wood. So we put the fire out, and I called Wraparound back. I said, the fire's gone down, and she was great. She goes, you know what you and the youth have created in the community? Between 100 and 150 years of life for the following generations. And I was so proud of the work that we've done, the youth. So about a sacred fire, that sacred fire burns all day and all night. So, and it's one of the biggest responsibilities for ceremony is to tend that fire. So, I had to have youth there that had to volunteer to come to that fire, all around the clock so it wouldn't go out. And right next to the fire was where I was having a place for the youth. And so what I decided to do is we taught drumming there, we taught singing there, we taught language there, and we'd have people dropping by there all hours of the night to come in, because that's what that fire did. It drew the people, it drew the community. So I didn't have to do any work about getting anybody to come to the fire or to get the fire to burn or anything. It just happened. And so what I like most about that story is how people can come to a place and then you can change their minds. Mm-hmm. And now they say, I was the one that brought culture back to the community. And it really wasn't me at all. It was that tobacco that I carried. So in the community, you'll find youth dancing. You'll hear youth speaking the language. You'll see cultural ceremonies. You'll see all sorts of activities in the community around culture, and languages in the community also. And it wasn't like that before.
It's so great, the kind of work that you've done with the youth and the community has really empowered the community, I must say. So congratulations to you for that. You've worked with youth as well. Indigenous youth specifically, how do you think your work helps them with employment specifically? Do you want to talk more about it?
I am so lucky to work where I do. I work for a company called WCG Services, and they have given me the platform to do this line of work, to work with my community. It's amazing. So I do work in employment services, And I do have the opportunity to work with our youth. And relating to your question, because there's so many systematic inequalities, historical trauma, lack of cultural awareness, and I think that relevant programming geared to Indigenous children and youth would be essential, because there's a lot of youth out there that don't know their culture themselves, and they might not know that's that piece that's missing from them. They might go somewhere where they're seeking services and you're like, well, how is this relevant to me? Because they don't know that side is missing, that yes, there are Indigenous, but they might need that cultural component within their seeking employment, you know. There is also limited access into, because Mkwa and I both come from reserve. The reserve I come from is, it's like an 8-hour train ride in exclusively, or a bush plane ride, and that is it. So it is extremely remote. It's very north in Manitoba. I didn't grow up in a reserve, but all my aunties and uncles did, and so once they hit, they had to go after school, the residential school. When they got older, they'd have to leave their community and go to a city to attend high school. Yeah, so they grew up fast because they had to be away from their families because the resources weren't there within their communities. So that is a huge impact on our youth, I think, right now. Limited resources and just living in rural communities where they don't have access to the amazing services that we might have within the city. A disconnection between education and employment. We have our education. What's next? There needs to be that training or that mentorship, where can I go to get my services, you know? There's a building pathway that needs to happen. Finally, the last thing I jotted down was underfunding and inconsistent programs. Programs that Mkwa does, those are fabulous, but programs like that, they're great at the top, they're great at the time, and maybe they lose funding eventually. And then what happens now? That program they heavily depended on, there's a lot of programs we have in our city that are so underfunded. You know, it's almost like you have to know where to seek programs. Our community relies very heavily on these programs, and it's good for their mental health, it's good for their getting out there and being social, and it's a good way of connecting. Develop stronger school to work pipelines. Some things I felt very passionate about, especially being an Indigenous youth myself growing up and just navigating, well, what do I do now, you know?
You've also got those resources when you needed them at the right time, at the right place.
You know, we still used a phone book, and I don't know, internet may not have existed, but, you know, and not to say that Gen Zs have it easier, but I think they might have too much internet, they might have too much knowledge, and they might, yes, they have access to internet and all those things, but they also might have those barriers where they don't have access to internet because they live on a remote reserve. You know, they might not know what's going on out there. They might not know what their options are. I think right now, and I strong-heartedly believe this, I think right now being a young person is hard because you have so much hitting you at once. There's just so much that impacts their mental health. I think they're struggling right now, and all the things I pointed out would be beneficial for them.
It's a thoughtful ask, because you've worked with youth, you've worked with people in your community, and you know what the kind of struggles that they go through with. If you get a chance to go back in time, what would you tell your 16-year self?
If I was to look back now, looking at where I am, I would just say, just keep on your path, because I'm okay where I am now. But to look back, I would just encourage that person, that young person, just to keep moving forward and keep doing things you're doing, because I'm going to get to this place where I'm at now, so I'm okay here. I'm very fortunate that I'm able to tell stories and hear stories. So that's what I really look forward to in my role with the United Way and with the Peel Newcomer Strategy Group.
What would you advise or tell your 16-year-old self if you get a chance to go back in time?
Oh, geez, you know, life gets better. Go through some hardships, but like my dear friend Mkwa just said, those hardships kind of curate your life and help you navigate, like, what kind of person am I gonna be? Am I gonna be those, as I like to call it, like a statistic, right? Am I gonna fall through the cracks and be option A, or be option B and just kind of rise up from that and just elevate yourself, right? Just be extremely mindful of that journey you want to take and the person you want to become. And honestly, I'm so grateful for everything I've been given, and I've gone through some hardships, but I'm kind of like a phoenix rising through the ashes. I'm just honored to be working with the company I work with and being able to work with my community. My 16-year-old self, I was a pretty depressed 16-year-old, so I think it does get better, but you also have to help yourself. You have to navigate that for yourself and just reconnect and kind of assess like who you want to be and how you want the world to see you. I consider myself a pretty bubbly person. Not always bubbly when I was a child, but that was something I needed to work on. And and I think it takes time, and it takes meeting incredible people like Mkwa and yourself just to how you want to present yourself.
Things will get better.
Yeah, things do get better.
Yeah, they do get better. I definitely love that. So thank you so much, Mkwa and Amber, for being a part of Elevate. And we were so honored to have both of you.
Thank you for joining us in this small little exercise. And we're going to make a tobacco tie. And the first thing we do is we have sema here. And sema is the first plant medicine that the Creator gave us. And just reach in with your left hand, your heart hand, and take some tobacco. So our first teacher, his name was Wayne Bajot, and he gave us our first plant medicine. So this sema is a little bit different, or tobacco. It's a little bit different. It's pipe tobacco. So this is the tobacco we offer to elders to put in their pipe to smoke. So the first thing you want to do is bring your cloth up, rest it in your hand, and just bring the four corners together. And I think you might have, I always find this the easiest part. For some people, this is the hardest part. You just pull it down nice and tight. Bring all the edges together, the corners together, and just hold it like that. And I have three ribbons here. And just take it and wrap it around once, twice, and then tie it. And what's significant about a tobacco tie, it kind of serves as our cell phone to Creator. So this represents our connection to Creator, and that medicine goes here in the eastern direction. The other thing about our altar cloth here is the yellow represents medicine of sema. Down here we have the medicine of cedar, and over here we have the medicine of sage, and up here we have the medicine of sweetgrass. So those are the four medicines that are represented on our altar cloth. And the last thing I'd like to talk about is our little shaker. When you're going to school, the teachers talked about the Big Bang theory, that the universe started in a Big Bang. In our culture, this is the sound of creation. And that's Mother Earth creating and bringing everything together so that we could live on Mkwa. So I just want to say thank you.